This is the Ezra podcast. The thing that's confusing is when I press record on this, right? It started at 20 seconds. Like, why would you start at 20 seconds if I just press record? See, I don't like problems like that to start off. I don't like to stumble out the gate. I really don't. That's why, like, when I do these, I would usually restart this just because it said that. Now, I noticed when I did the live the other day that it did start off a little late. So I'm hoping this doesn't start off a little late. Maybe that's why I'm delaying this again. And just in case it did start off a little late, let's run this back. This is the Ezra podcast. So that way, if you heard two entrances and you were like, why the hell did you do that? That was just in case for some reason this thing cut off the beginning part of it because it did that last time. See, I just prepare for something to mess up. I'm gonna roll with it this time. Usually I would stop. I would not do this. I would just be like, I'm frustrated. It's late. But no. We're just gonna keep going with this. Because you know we're talking this right now? We're talking about UFC 280. And I haven't done an MMA one in a while. And I'm really, really pumped for this one. And I think this is the best card of the year the UFC has to offer. I really do. I think it's the best card of the year. And I think that there's about 4 fights on here that are just beautiful matchmaking. You can make a case for either guy to win the fight. And I'm going to get into it. And let's get into the main event, which is, I think, is the best grappling match has ever been made in UFC history. And that is Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Now, Islam Makhachev, of course, is supposed to be the heir to what could be left at lightweight in the UFC. And he's pretty much lived up to expectations besides the one loss where, the surprise loss, KO loss. But everything since then has been just pretty much domination. Now, it has been an interesting journey for him because in the lightweight division where there's a lot of contenders, there's a lot of good, big names and tough fights, he hasn't really faced any of them. And that's not to his blame, really, honestly. He's had replacements. He's he just worked his way up. Just those matchups weren't there for him. No one really wanted to fight Islam Makhachev, if to be honest with you. It's not like a fight that makes a lot of sense to fight a guy that's like barely entering the top 10, who's very tough, who might be like one of the toughest matchups in the UFC. Those guys ain't too eager to give him a shot when they're already right there next to title shot. So you got to remember both things. It's like it works both ways here. I'm sure Islam would love to fight Dustin Poirier. I'm sure he'd love to fight Gaethje, Chandler. Just those matches weren't there. But the guys that were there possible for him, he went through like a hot knife through butter. Now, the fight that stands out to me, and it's one of the better fights. And if you have the chance, it's on YouTube. I've seen it multiple times. Is Islam versus Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Tsarukyan surprises, I think, Makhachev in this fight with his grappling skills. And it's a very, very good grappling match. And it's a match that kind of, shows that Islam, he could be matched with a grappling. It isn't the necessarily the dominance that Khabib had. Maybe he could be matched, right? And Arman's a very good grappler. But you've seen in that fight that Khabib was really never in that situation. As far as just like grappling, he was never in that situation. Now you had moments where maybe like someone would stop a takedown for a little, but then eventually he'd get it. But no one's like out grappling with him. No one's like countering what he's doing. No one's doing that to Khabib. That happens in the Islam fight. Reason I bring that matchup up is because Charles Oliveira is a high level grappler. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is in MMA probably like second to none. And if they get into a grappling match, which I think we all imagine is going to happen in this fight, I think it's easy to think that Makhachev just gets on top and dominates. But I don't see that. I really don't. I think Makhachev, yes, will he end up on top of this fight? No doubt about it. He definitely will. Will he get taken on this fight? Yeah, he probably will. But Makhachev's top game is more of control. It's a more controlled time. And he doesn't necessarily punish you too much. He more rides it out on top, more controls the position. And if he can get to a position that he really likes, to a dominant position, he will go for a submission. But he's not a guy that takes a lot of chances on top. And if you're not going to put a beating on Oliveira when he's on the bottom, and you're just going to look to ride it out, Oliveira's not a kind of guy, right, with a guard that good, right, with jiu-jitsu that good, that's just going to stay on his back and let you ride out for a full 5 minutes of a round and a full 5 rounds. He's just not going to let that happen. And in this fight, I think that Charles Oliveira for sure will maybe end up on his back in this fight, but I don't think I see him settling there, and I don't see him staying there. And I don't think you can just ride out against Charles Oliveira for 5 rounds, for 5 minutes for 5 rounds. I just don't see it. Now, in the stand-up portion of the fight, with Charles Oliveira has improved vastly. Like I think it's the greatest improvement of a veteran fighter at this point of their career to improve with their stand-up as much as Charles Oliveira did. And a key element of it is he's not afraid to get taken down. So he's able to use everything he's learning to the fullest of his capabilities. He's able to really think out there, pick his shots, place them together, fight at whatever range he wants to fight at, because he's not afraid to go to the ground. He has absolutely no fear of going to the ground. It allows a full looseness to his game. It's a looseness I haven't really seen since maybe Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. And Nate Diaz, it makes sense, right? He's so good on his back, jiu-jitsu, that he'll welcome you to do that. Now, Conor McGregor was never that level off his back. Let me pull up the fight poster. There you go. Conor McGregor was never that level off his back, but still fought in a way that he was going to get to his spots. He was going to get to his position, and he was going to apply his game with the stand-up. That's how Charles Oliveira fights. Charles Oliveira is so comfortable. The way he even looks like the way the check kicks, he just kind of stands on one leg and keeps it in the check position. It's just not stuff that people do in MMA because you get taken down so easily, right? It's just a vulnerable spot, but he's not afraid to be taken down. He also doesn't accept the takedowns as much as when he did earlier in his career, which probably led to a lot of losses, right? A lot of losses on scorecards. Is accepting position. He doesn't accept position anymore. If you go in for a takedown, if you want to grapple with him, he's going to look to get the better position of it. Now, will he go down to his back? Yes, if someone lands a big punch on him, he will go down on his back. Now, I don't necessarily think he's always hurt when he does that. I think it's more of a defense mechanism. It just gets him out of a hairy spot when he needs to. But that's about the only time that he's willing to like give up the position. But if you're going to go and try to grapple with him, he's going to look to trip you. He's going to look to get in a favorable position for himself. As far as Makhachev stand-up is more defensive. He's more defensively aware, and it makes sense. Because you've seen in the fight where he gets knocked out, where he got too greedy. He got wild. And he got disciplined in that fight. And from that point on, he gets way more defensive, and he's very defensively aware. And he tries to stay control. Now there is moments where he gets back to the Makhachev that got knocked out, the mistakes, the lunging, the coming forward, chin in the air. He has that, but you very rarely see it. And even like when he's in the stand-up, and it's a stand-up portion of the fight, he actually doesn't release a lot of offense. It's a lot of just defensively aware, looking to place one or two shots, and then get back in a clinch or to a takedown to get back to the ground. I think Oliveira will have a huge advantage as far as just because he's going to release shots. He's going to trust his game in the stand-up. I don't think if this was a purely a stand-up fight, Makhachev has a chance in that fight. But we know it's not going to just be a purely stand-up fight. You know there's going to be a point where Makhachev shoots for a takedown. And what happens there, right? If Oliveira gets to his back, how long can Makhachev stay in control? Can he dominate that position? Can he control that position and avoid all the threats that Oliveira is going to throw? Another key thing is I'm not sure who's better on top in this fight. That might sound crazy to say, but Charles Oliveira might be more dangerous on top. And if he does get on top, I know Makhachev's not as good on the ground, on his back, as Charles Oliveira is. I cannot see Makhachev winning this fight because he's gonna win a decision if he wins this fight. He's not gonna tap out Israel. Oliveira. He's not gonna. He just doesn't have the top game to do a lot of damage like Khabib does, right? To be on top. He's not gonna win a stand-up portion of this fight. He's gonna be defensive, and if he starts getting out of his game in the stand-up, he'll be put to sleep because he's gonna get wild. He's gonna lunge, and Charles Oliveira make him pay for it. And if he gets to Charles Oliveira reverses the position on him and he ends up on his back, Charles Oliveira will finish him. There's just too many ways for Charles Oliveira to win this fight for me to say that Makhachev is just going to be able to hold on for 5 minutes for 5 rounds. I just can't see it. I can't see it. I think Charles Oliveira will eventually work his way to a position that's favorable to him, and I think he will end up on top. And when he ends up on top in this fight, I believe this fight will be over. I'm going to take Charles Oliveira in a win that's going to put him in the talks of Khabib. Who would have ever thought that? Ever. That Charles Oliveira is going to be considered one of the greatest lightweights of all time. And this win might honestly put him a stamp where he's at the level that we could talk about with Khabib. Where if you say him and Khabib fight each other, it's a reasonable debate on who wins. You never thought you'd be here. I think that when this fight goes to the ground, it's going to be one of the most interesting things to ever happen in the UFC. To see how it plays out. I can't wait. If Makhachev dominates Charles Oliveira on the ground, I mean, who's going to beat him from this point on? I can't wait to see it. It's one of those things where it might not be like the best fight ever, but just you're going to find some truths in it. And that's what you want when you have these fights. You're going to have some, that's what this fight has. The buzz of it, just like, what's going to happen? What is it going to look like? In the co-main event, we have Aljamain Sterling versus Dillashaw. Now, Sterling coming off his biggest win of his career, I think a big surprise that he beat Peter Yan. In the way he beat Peter Yan, especially. Now, you have Dillashaw coming off an injury, but a fight that he beat Corey Sandhagen. Now, when I say that the Sterling beat Yan, it was surprising because it was a rematch in the first fight. Of course, Yan was DQ'd for a knee while Sterling was down. But up until that point, Yan was dominating that fight, and Sterling really didn't have anything to offer him. And when Sterling couldn't get the fight to the ground, and he had to just stay standing up. His stand-up was not at that level. But when he gets to the rematch, Sterling, instead of I wouldn't say he didn't improve, but instead of changing his strategy, he kind of just stepped more into his strategy. He upped his work rate. He upped the pace. And he kept Peter Yan home for 3 rounds. And he got to Peter Yan's back in the round. And I think, honestly, in 2 of them. And he had control. And I understand that Peter Yan's work maybe was cleaner or it was more technically better. And you feel that Peter Yan's the better stand-up fighter. But it doesn't matter if you're not taking the chances to earn the points, right? If you're not taking chances to earn the points to win the rounds, then you're going to give it to the guy who is doing the work, who is taking the chances, who is outworking him. And that's what Sterling did. And yes, Yan was better later in the fight, but Sterling had did enough already to win the majority of the rounds to win the fight. Now, when you go with Dillashaw, I'm sure people are going to assume that Dillashaw is a better striker than Sterling. I'm sure people are going to say that he's technically better. He's more strategic. He should own that part of the fight. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, Peter Yan's a way better stand-up fighter than Dillashaw. He is. And I honestly don't think Dillashaw is that great of a stand-up fighter. I think that, honestly, he's pretty similar to Sterling. Now, I think Dillashaw is more follows the game plan. He more has a strategy, and I think Sterling is more just whatever he feels at that moment. But they do a lot of switches. They both do a lot of switches. They both do a lot of herky-jerky movement. This is going to be a herky-jerky fest. That's really what this is going to be. They both like to up their output. They both like to mix up their shots. Now, I said Dillashaw's going to have more of a game plan. And Sterling's just going to do more what he feels, but he's going to up the pace. I think this is going to be a really kind of fast-paced action in the stand-up portion. Now, I believe Sterling's going to look a lot bigger in the ring, in the cage. And I think so the size advantage will be apparent. Now, I think Dillashaw, even though he beat Corey Sandhagen, I do think I saw him slowing down in that fight. I don't think that was the Dillashaw that before the suspension. I don't believe that was. And he had lost a few fights before before the suspension even happened. But I didn't think that this was like, oh, Dillashaw that he didn't miss a beat. I know I didn't think that. I thought, especially he even got hurt in that fight, but I thought he looked a step slow. And he used craftiness to win that fight. The only thing is he's not going to out-grapple Sterling. And he's not going to be able to win those positions. So he's going to have to win a stand-up fight. And personally, I think Sterling's in his prime. I think he's got more speed. He's got more strength. He's going to be able to outwork Dillashaw. I think Dillashaw's just going to be a step slow. Now, Sterling puts himself in bad positions. And when he was knocked out by Marlon Moraes, it's because he puts the way he looks for takedowns or like to grab your leg, it's not like a shot like where he's putting a full motion into his hips and legs to explode at you. No, he literally crouches over and grabs your legs to pull it up. It's real like a jiu-jitsu base type takedown. And Marlon Moraes confused him on what leg was going to go. And it got him to kneel over 100% like that, crouched over into the knee of Marlon Moraes when he's going for a head kick. Dillashaw could set up Sterling for those situations. I think Dillashaw's going to have to rely a lot on faith and a lot on making Sterling pay for the mistakes he makes. And when Jan was being too careful, Dillashaw can't afford to be that. He can't be too careful. He's got to take chances. He's got to be able to react when Sterling gives him all these opportunities and openings. I think Sterling's going to outwork him in this fight. I think if it gets to a grappling match, Sterling will win that portion. I think later in the fight, there's a good chance that Sterling is able to get a hold of Dillashaw, take him down the ground, and get a submission. I really believe that. I think that especially with Dillashaw's age and getting tired and Sterling's strength in this fight, there's a good chance he kind of dominates the grappling portion of it. But if it stays standing, I think it could be very entertaining. But Dillashaw just a step slow. And I think that you're going to be surprised if Sterling is able to outstrike another top guy at bantamweight in the UFC. I'm going to take Sterling decision in this fight. And I think it could be a little bit lopsided. I think it could be a very competitive fight, though. It's funny, is you think that a competitive fight means it has to be a close score. That doesn't mean that. But I just think that Dillashaw will always be a step slow and not have the work rate to keep up with Sterling. I do want to point out that this would be Sterling's like fourth or third notable win. It's really depending on if you count DQs as a notable win. I think there's a lot of context to that. Now, I think Sterling was losing that fight before the DQ happened, but let's just say you do count it. This would be Sterling's fourth notable win in his career. That's it's starting to add up, right? He's starting to have a real legendary career if he gets this win. Now, the man we were just talking about, Peter Yan, will be taking on Sean O'Malley. This will be Sean O'Malley's first step-up fight versus a top contender. Now, I think that maybe people are expecting Sean O'Malley to have his welcome party as, into title contention as one of the top guys in the UFC. And Peter Yan, who just lost to Sterling and wasn't exactly his most impressive performance and didn't kind of got outstruck early by Sterling. Maybe people are down on his stock, right? I'm going to tell you right now, Peter Yan is still a great fighter. I think he's the best boxer in the UFC. I've thought that for a while now. I think I've thought that I'm going on 2 years now. Now, Sean O'Malley has shown a lot of, special moments. And he's shown moments where you think he could be, at that level where like he has the star power to be like a Conor McGregor type, right? And has the skills and highlight reels to really capture the imagination of fans. But there's things that I've also seen, right, where he's fighting guys that he should beat. You have to remember that. He's fighting a certain level of competition. He's fighting guys that are there to lose. They're fighting guys that favor his style. And when you're a style like Sean O'Malley, it's really easy. Not really easy, but it's the right style when you're crushing cans to have the moments that look like you could be something special. But you have to understand that if Peter Yan was fighting the guy that Sean O'Malley was fighting, he'd be smashing him in a similar way and probably more effective and probably and more devastating. But Sean O'Malley does have all these highlights, right? He does have the marketing behind him. He does have the look. He has the branding, but I think he's lacking some things. And I think that yes, while he looked really good against those guys, when he a pinpoint guy like him was able to exploit guys that don't have the stand up, that don't understand the range, that have to kind of look to smother and walk into shots. Peter Yan's not going to do that. Peter Yan's going to make you do things that you're not going to be able to have one look and be able to beat a guy like Peter Yan. Sean O'Malley needs you to come forward. He needs to be able to react. He's a reaction type fighter. I don't believe he can create offense going forward. I really don't. Now, you might be able to see highlights where he stops a guy, but the guy's already hurt and he comes forward. Yeah, sure. But can he create openings coming forward? I don't think he can. Now, Peter Yan's a very cautious fighter because in the beginning of a fight, and it might be a lot of staring, feints, and not a lot of action, maybe first 2 rounds. But when Peter Yan does start getting the rhythm and he starts putting pressure or starts responding to Sean O'Malley's going to have to show something at that point. Now, he's going to have the range and the height and the reach to make Peter Yan pay if he gets too eager. That's going to be his best chance in this fight. But Peter Yan's not a dumb fighter, and I believe he's going to come in with a high guard. And he might not even punch his way in. He might just walk in on Sean O'Malley, not give him the opening. And Sean O'Malley's going to have to figure out if he can fight at an inside distance, if he can fight going forward, if he can create offense, or is he just a guy that can pinpoint shots when someone's marching in on him? Because if that's all he is, then you're going to see Peter Yan really take it to him in the 3rd and 4th round. Also be aware that Sean O'Malley, I think there's something wrong with his ankles, like where they just kind of roll. It's just, I don't know, some guys just have ankles like that, right? That just shot like Steph Curry early in his career, just his ankles roll. He always has a sprained ankle. I think Sean O'Malley kind of has something similar like that. His ankle always seems to roll. Another thing is he doesn't take leg kicks well. We saw that in the Marlon Vera fight. We've seen it in multiple fights. Peter Yan can mix leg kicks in with his strikes. And they're pretty compact. And he could put it in the calf. He could put it in the ankle. I'm really curious to see how Sean O'Malley reacts once things start opening up and everything's ending with a leg kick from Peter Yan. I think Peter Yan's going to be able to get on the inside of Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley is going to have a lot of problems in this fight. I think Sean O'Malley is not going to be able to show those levels that people want to believe he has in this fight. I think if Sean O'Malley wins this fight, he's going to show me things that I haven't seen. And he's going to prove me wrong that he could fight at range. He could find the inside. He could fight outside. He could create offense pushing Yan back. Or he could create offense just Yan not giving him anything, just not reacting. He's going to force the offense. I have not seen that yet. I think Yan marches him down. I think Yan punishes him. I think first 2 rounds is a lot of staring, 3rd and 4th. And I think eventually Yan does get the stoppage in this fight. And I wouldn't be surprised if Yan wins by submission. And let me see the last time Yan won by submission. I don't believe he's won by submission in the UFC. He has one submission win. That was back when he fought the ACB 19. That's in 2015. I'm going to pick Peter Yan by submission in this fight. I think that eventually he breaks down Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley will wilt to forward pressure. I think he will wilt to Peter Yan's inside fighting. And I think he will put himself in a position where Peter Yan will eventually get his back or do some damage to him while he's on the ground. I'm going to take Peter Yan in this fight. I really think that if Sean O'Malley wins this fight, he's a real deal, of course. But he's also going to show things that we have not seen before. And only a guy like Peter Yan can bring out of him. And if he wins this fight, I mean, you know that a Sterling fight is next or a Dillashaw fight is next, whoever wins that title. And I mean, things are just going to skyrocket for him. So this could be the birth of a superstar in MMA, because it's right there. It's bubbling up to that. And this is the fight that he needs to, this is the Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes fight. This is the fight that just blows him up to a whole nother level. And him versus Sterling or Dillashaw would be huge and main event and all this buzz. But I think that people are forgetting who Peter Yan is. And people are forgetting how good he is. And I know that the Sterling fight wasn't like anything to be confident after or that backed up everything that I'm saying about Peter Yan. But you got to remember, still in the last 2 rounds, he's still winning in that fight. And it just might be, Sterling saw him the first time in a fight that I thought Peter Yan was going to win, and we would have never had a rematch. But Sterling saw him, and the team got to train with him, and to game plan again. And, they just confused him enough early, right, with the takedowns and a lot of work, a lot of strikes from everywhere that just kind of kept him home. O'Malley doesn't have that game. He's more pinpoint pick his shots, and this is going to really favor Yan in this type of matchup. I think this is going to be a great night of fighting. You got to remember, it starts early because I believe this is in, where is this at? Abu Dhabi. This is Abu Dhabi. So remember, the card's going to start early. I believe it starts at 11, like prelims at least. But I think it's going to be a great night of fighting. It's good to have a big MMA card back. And I don't know. Thank you guys for listening. Peace.